The German capital inspector Volker Stanzel, a former German ambassador to China, currently a senior distinguished fellow at the German Institute for International and Security Affairs. Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much indeed for your time. If you learned something new after that meeting between President Xi and Biden, then you've done better than most of us, because there didn't seem to be anything original.
You're quite right. And we just heard the word reset of the relationship. I think the two sides are very far away from any kind of reset. But if the ambition has been to lay out red lines to understand where the relationship is truly vulnerable, then I think it served its purpose. Both sides see quite well that this relationship presently in the world is the most dangerous one, even though we have a war going on in Europe, even though we have other problems like the Iranian problem in the world. But the relationship between the US and China could deteriorate into a very, very nasty conflict. So to understand that it is necessary to avoid a conflict while acknowledging at the same time that the two are in a competitive relationship. I think this is the point of departure for the two to understand each other's red lines. And you've mentioned some presently, like Taiwan. Obviously, that is a red line for China, and it's a red line for the United States as well. So both sides understand that. And the two sides' positions are not compatible, but it is possible to avoid a conflict that could be very nasty indeed.
Surely the only way there would be a conflict over Taiwan would be if the Americans guaranteed Taiwanese security. And they haven't done that, have they? Whatever domestic issues Xi Jinping is facing, they may be holding him back from his greater ambitions to reunify that island with the mainland. At the moment, he probably has too many problems at home to push that too far. But the Americans haven't guaranteed Taiwanese security, have they?
President Biden has said 4 times that, of course, in a case of an armed conflict, the United States would come to the aid of Taiwan. This is actually a change in from the previous position of strategic ambiguity. Now it's a kind of constructive, or you might even call it aggressive ambiguity, because it is a warning, quite clearly. So this is something the Chinese understand, and the Americans understand that the Chinese want to achieve unification at some point in the future. However, the positions of both sides, the interests of both sides are not compatible. You know, if Taiwan unified with the People's Republic, a country as we have it today that tries to change many of the rules of the world, then that would be an enormous strategic benefit for China. On the other hand, if as long as the United States are able to maintain peace in the Taiwan Strait and in East Asia, the interests not only of the US, but also of its East Asian and Southeast Asian allies are taken care of. So how to bring these two interests together? I think what previous Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping pursued, the line of just waiting for the future to solve problems that we cannot resolve peacefully presently, has been a very wise policy. And I would hope that both sides take that to heart.
Mr. Ambassador, what do you think, or what are you hoping is going to be the best possible outcome from this G20? I mean, as an international diplomat, what's your analysis about the importance of this meeting? Many people might say that actually the most critical encounter is happening in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, where delegates are trying to save the planet's future.
You're quite right. And this is an expected disappointment of the meeting in Bali so far, and especially of the meeting between Xi Jinping and President Biden. Among the many topics both leaders mentioned after their meeting that they discussed, climate did not even come to the fore. And we all know that our very existence depends on the problem of climate. Sharm el-Sheikh is indeed the more important venue presently. But the G20 also, of course, have an important role. And now we just touched upon the relationship between the United States and China, which I think, is a relationship that could be very volatile and become extremely dangerous for all of us. But you also, of course, have the war of Russia against Ukraine, which has an effect that touches upon the livelihood of many people in the world, in Africa, also in South Asia. And this is something that the G20 need to talk about or have talked about already. And then there are other problems like the nuclear problem in North Korea or the danger of a nuclear problem in Iran. So indeed, the G20 have problems to solve. Originally, I mean, they were only dealing with financial questions and economic questions, but now this group has become a group that has to tackle even the most important geostrategic problems that we have.
Volker Stanzel, it's always a pleasure to hear your analysis. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you for having me.